Welcome, everybody. This is your host tonight, Shen Ge. You're listening to SG2 on Space, episode number 48, here in the studio of Action One Media, which you can find on weara1.com. This show, SG2 on Space, you can find on YouTube at, well, you can search for SG2 on Space. And thank you, everybody, for following me on Facebook.com/The Shen Show. And also, thank you supporters for the Patreon at patreon.com/SG2 on Space. Feel free to support me. So, I'd like to also add that any moment you can give a call at 713-489, and this is to the studio, 713-489-9250. If you have a question or a commentary, 713-489-9250. All right, so today I figured I would actually spend some time talking about some magnetic stuff and some stuff about aliens. That's a plan. Maybe throw in a few other things. So let's talk about some of the events coming up first, all right? There's quite a lot of events going on, at least locally, Houston area. So for instance, there's a Johnson Space Center Astronomical Society meeting tomorrow. That's tomorrow. I'm saying this if you're watching this live, of course. So that's Friday, October 11th at 7:30 p.m. Dr. David Kryn is going to talk about the Earth's oldest rocks on the moon, and it is at the Lunar and Planetary Institute, which, like I mentioned last week, they have a lot of cool events. So, you know. Anyways, this is a JSC Astronomical Society meeting, October 11th, 7:30 p.m. Okay. For people more inclined with the startup world and probably maybe a greater scope than just listening to astronomy lecture, there's a hackathon. That's right. NASA had a hackathon actually this past Tuesday, but there's another hackathon, Pumps and Pipes hackathon here at Houston Exponential, which is a startup incubator in Houston, in downtown. So Pumps and Pipes hackathon, it brings together aerospace, energy, and medical industries to solve issues together. So those are the three big things in Houston, right? And this is going to be the first time they're doing this. So I think it's going to start from 5 p.m. on Friday. It ends at, I believe, 5 p.m. on Sunday at Houston Exponential. So October 11th to October 13th. October 11th, that's Friday, starts at 5 p.m. October 13th is Sunday. Now, I'm not sure if you need to stay all 3 days, but as any hackathon, you work together in teams, you solve a problem, right? So in this competition, apparently it's a complex computational and data-driven challenge. We have a great set of challenges waiting for you to test the limits of your skills and imagination. Food and drinks are on us, so you won't go hungry. And who knows, you may just start something that becomes the next big thing. I'm not able to make it, but for you guys who's, technically competent and interested and has an entrepreneurial drive, go ahead. So, what I am going to go to, though, is next Wednesday, October 16th, at 7 p.m. I'm going to go to the 7 p.m. one, but there's both a 1 p.m. and a 7 p.m. one. Space Center Houston's Thought Leader Series. Okay, so as part of the Association of Space Explorers, ASE Planetary Congress, which is convening in Houston, 4 astronauts/cosmonauts will discuss their lives in space and careers. So they are British cosmonaut Helen Sharma, NASA astronaut Katie Coleman, JAXA astronaut Koichi Wakata, and Romanian cosmonaut Dumitru Dorin Pranario. So they present during 2 sessions open to Space Center Houston visitors. Anyone can attend. So, free event, has limited seating. Admission is included with a general admission ticket. So please go. Space Center Houston is located next to NASA Johnson Space Center. So just give you a short background. Helen Sharman was the first British cosmonaut and the first woman to visit the Mir space station, which was the Russian space station. Katie Coleman flew twice on the shuttle and once to the International Space Station. Koichi Wakata was the first Japanese commander of the station, and Pranario was the president of the Romanian Space Agency and is a founding member of the ASE, the Association of Space Explorers. That's another thing. The Planetary Congress for the ASE is this coming week. So maybe you guys would be interested in going to some of those. All right. Another cool thing, closer into Houston here, for those of you who want to, there's Rice University has these things called Space Frontier Lecture Series. I don't think they've had one in a while, but they're having one coming up. And that one's going to be on Thursday, October 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. And the talk is by Dr. John B. Charles. It's called From Here to Mars, How the Year-Long ISS, International Space Station, mission and the twin study move us closer to the red planet. Give you a little short background. Dr. John B. Charles, whom I've met in person before, in fact. He is a pretty cool guy. He's a lifelong space nerd. In fact, I should ask him to be interviewed on this show. Note to self. He's a long-time NASA life scientist and manager fascinated with spaceflight history and space life sciences. He has a BS in biophysics, PhD in physiology and biophysics. Retired from NASA in February 2018 after nearly 33 years in career that began when he was a cardiovascular investigator on space shuttle flights. Okay, he was the chief scientist of NASA's Human Research Program. Anyways, now semi-retired, John is the first scientist in resident at the Space Center Houston. He's also an adjunct professor of kinesiology at Texas A&M University. Also a consultant to STEMRAD Ltd, an Israeli company building radiation protection garments for Orion crews. And he and his wife own Act for Space LLC, a private outreach, education, research, and consulting business. This guy does quite a lot. He doesn't even sound like he's retired. All right. So he's going to be giving the talk at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 17th, 2019, at the Bioscience Research Collaborative, which is located at second floor, lecture room 280, at the building called the Bioscience Research Collaborative. And if you have questions on where that is, I suppose you could ask me on Facebook, or you could contact Pamela S. Jones. I suppose she would know. She's the coordinator of these events, and she's a Rice University administrator, Pamela S. Jones. So that would be, you can also email spacefrontiers@mailman.rice.edu. So another good option. All right, so that is all pretty cool. And then for you guys more into aviation and so forth, the Wings Over Houston, one of the largest air shows in the country, if not the world, is the next weekend, October 19th and 20th, 2019. The Blue Angels are going to fly the snowbirds from Canada, so you can buy your tickets now, save you a few bucks instead of getting at the gate. It's pretty much all day on Saturday, all day on Sunday. So 2 days. You don't have to go 2 days. You just go 1 day. That's wingsoverhouston.com. Wings, W-I-N-G-S. So happens once a year, right? So if you're interested, sign up, right? So another thing, I got this brochure in my mail. The SpaceCom is coming to Houston again this year, like every year. November 20th through 21st. It is the largest space conference in Houston and one of the largest in the country. So it brings together, NASA, various government agencies, industry, entrepreneurs, other international space agencies, right? So this year, just give you a few key highlights. Wednesday, November 20th, so it's a 2-day, right? Wednesday, November 20th, the first topic would be lunar prospecting with robotics, which sounds really interesting. Then space traffic management and orbital debris mitigation, right? So then there's digital evolution cross-industry implications. So that's talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, spectroscopy, data analytics, and digitization, how that corresponds with space. Then artificial intelligence, robotics, and autonomous systems. Then the plenary session from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Jim Bernstein, the current NASA administrator, has been invited. I'm not exactly sure if he'd be here, but you will at least have FAA folks, Carissa Christine, founder and CEO of Bryce Space and Technology, and Kevin O'Connell, director of the Office of Space Commerce at the Department of Commerce. So we're going to talk about integration of space into existing land, sea, and air domains. Okay, so it's kind of cool. Moderated by Stuart Martin, who's the CEO of Satellite Applications Catapult. Then we'll just talk about Artemis in the afternoon and a whole bunch of other things. Okay, so there seems to be a lot of focus. Just taking a look at this, there seems to be a lot of focus on the moon and industry. In fact, there's also one about 5G and air traffic plus space traffic and the moon. So that's kind of cool. All right. So if you guys could afford it, go. I mean, it's worth it, I would think. I will see if I can go myself as well. So that is November 20th through 21st at the George R. Brown Convention Center. Good stuff here. Okay, I feel like I've talked way too long for now. That was covering quite a lot of news that's been going on. So, why don't I talk about a book? Or let's not talk about a book. Let's talk about this. Remember last time I was going to tell you a few things about this book I've been reading called Aliens? Let's talk about this once we get back. All right, we're going to take a short little break. We're going to come back, talk about a few stuff about this, what I learned from this, talk about spacesuits, talk about where the Indians are with the Chandrayaan-2 orbiter, move on to magnet stuff, and talk about more aliens. So, let's get to it. Short break.
You know, some of the other things you got going on.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in the presence of like celebrities. Y'all real fans to me.
It's just the shades, man. It's the shades.
So I think like 2000.
Action 1, inspiring next.
It was a Thursday in March 2013, all right? And this was in Florida, Kissimmee. That's near Orlando. So what happened is that Trish Bishop, okay, she saw this thing appear as a hologram at first. It's like, appears a hologram at first, so kind of like not solid, then solid, suddenly right at the edge of the forest behind her home, right? Trish Bishop. And what did it look like? Well, he, I don't know why she thinks it's a he, but anyways, he stood tall, at least 6'3", perhaps 220 pounds, very muscular, wearing a form-fitting tan-colored uniform, boots, and gloves. When he turned around, his face, she's remembered, Trish Bishop remembered, that stopped her, okay? So what did his face look like? Wow, bulging eyes so far out of the sockets that Bishop wondered whether
some of the other things you got going on. Man.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in the presence of like celebrity. Y'all real
It's
fancy to me.
just the shades, man. It's the shades.
All right, we're back in the studio. So SG2 in space. This is your host Shenga. Episode number 48. Feel free to call in at 713-489-9250 if you're inclined. Which somehow, yes, 713-489-9250. Not sure why I'm laughing. Sometimes I do that. So, any case, oh yes. So if you're watching, hopefully you're watching me on YouTube at SG2 on Space. You can look that up, or facebook.com/theshinshow. So before I went to break, I was actually going over a long list of local events that's happening here in the Houston, Texas area. If you missed that, well, of course, you can just go back and watch it, or I can list them out later. Today, I actually want to talk about aliens for a good chunk of it, but with some science thrown in and some space exploration. So speaking of aliens, a little while back, I was talking to you about this book, which is actually quite interesting. This is a book by Jim L. Khalili, and it's called The World's Leading Scientists on the Search for Extraterrestrial Life, and the book is basically just called Aliens. So, these are essentially essays from a huge spectrum of the scientific community, which includes cosmologists, astrophysicists, planetary scientists, geneticists, These words, they mess me up sometimes, I have to admit. But anyways, one of the first people who were talking about aliens was actually the physicist Enrico Fermi, okay? Italian-born American Nobel Prize-winning physicist, right? Fermions is named after him, and Fermi Paradox. Actually, Fermi Paradox is what I'm talking about here. All right, so I'm going to read this little passage here. In 1950, he posed a very simple question that had nothing to do with his research in nuclear physics. It did, however, have a very profound implication for anyone who's interested in the question of extraterrestrial life. The story goes that the question came up during a lunchtime chat he was having with colleagues at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, sometime home of the Manhattan Project. They had been discussing the possibility that the Earth had been visited by aliens in flying saucers. The conversation was lighthearted, and it didn't appear that any of the scientists at that particular gathering actually believed in aliens. But Fermi asked a very simple question. Where is everybody? His point was that since the age of the universe is so great and its size so vast, with almost 500 billion stars in the Milky Way alone, many of which would have their own planetary systems, that unless the Earth is astonishingly and unjustifiably special, the universe should be seething with life, including intelligent species advanced enough to have the knowledge and technology necessary for space travel. Surely, then, he argued, we should have been visited by aliens at some point in our history. Indeed, maybe those accounts of flying saucer sightings that were being reported at the time were true. For Fermi, it was obvious that, assuming our planet was not unique, not only should it be overwhelmingly likely that intelligent life exists elsewhere, but that there has been plenty of time for any alien civilization with modest expansion ambitions and a sufficiently well-developed space travel technology to have colonized the entire galaxy by now. So, where are they all? Okay, so I could go on, but let's just put it that this is known as the Fermi Paradox. Where are they all? If they're... So Fermi apparently did not believe that we've already been visited by aliens, and his justification was that owing to the theory of relativity, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, so no aliens would even want to travel a ridiculously long distance to reach us, which to me is a absurd notion, because I would imagine as soon as humans, start settling the solar system, at least some of us will want to go off to a different star system, regardless of distance, okay? We may, I don't know, we'll have cryogenics by then, like those sci-fi movies, or we may have generational ships, one generation after another. Or, who knows? Maybe we send robots out that could, that could prepare the way for humans later. So you would think there would be something, right? We can talk about some really interesting happenings later on. Personally, I believe that stuff has already been happening here, as I talk about it all the time. But it's interesting. All right. So to go anywhere, of course, you also have to closer into home. I have to say that I'm excited about going back to the moon. So that's the first step. All right. First step for us to venture out, not just have other people, other species come visit us. So NASA apparently is looking at the private sector to help manufacture and develop the XEMU suit. So this is building and certifying a new spacesuit, which is known as the Exploration Extravehicular Mobility Unit, XEMU. So the first ones are going to be made in-house at NASA. In fact, it's being made right now at NASA Johnson Space Center here in Houston. So it'll be tested on the International Space Station in 2023. It's going to be worn by the astronauts who touch down, and it's going to be also worn by the astronauts who touch down the lunar surface in 2024 on the Artemis 3 mission. Note that Artemis is NASA's crewed lunar exploration program, which wants to establish a long-term lunar presence, human presence on the moon by 2028. So, but after 2024, NASA wants aid from the industry, okay? So on Friday, October 4th, NASA published a request for information, RFI, asking for the industry feedback to refine a mature acquisition strategy for production and services for lunar space suits. So after Artemis 3, NASA's going to let industry go and do it, all right? The XMU note could be adapted for other destinations besides the moon, such as Mars or elsewhere. How is it different from the Apollo suits? Well, the 50-year-old Apollo moon suits, that wasn't very comfortable. The astronauts could barely lean down to grab any rocks, right? So if you also notice, they could barely walk in that, so they had to bunny hop if you saw the old Apollo videos. So the XMU will incorporate significant mobility improvements. So the lower torso of the spacesuit will use bearings and other components to allow astronauts to walk instead of just bunny hop, or even kneel while doing experiments and geological work. All right. Our current spacesuits, by the way, is designed for extravehicular activity. So in other words, like outside of the space station. So it's in a kind of like a weightless environment, which doesn't work well if you're on a planetary surface like the moon, right? So, yeah, so it's not designed for walking or your lower torso, our current spacesuits up there. So that's why a new one needs to be developed, okay? So, I was going to play this video about what the Indians are doing, since I might as well talk about, because they, speaking of the moon, right? What's the other group? Okay, well, the Chinese is there, but let's talk about the Indians, because they recently released some footage, all right? Which is kind of cool. I don't know if I want to play this whole thing, so maybe we'll just play a minute of it. I actually find it kind of interesting. It's this particular guy speaking a language that I'm not sure about what language it is. So, but he's talking about the Chandrayaan-2 mission. To give you a background, Chandrayaan-2 was launched in July this year, 2019. It was designed to, look at the water ice on the space at the South Pole, right? We all know by now that the South Pole of the moon has water and ice. Okay. So the whole mission had an orbiter that goes around the moon, as well as a lander and a rover. Unfortunately, as noted, the lander and rover failed, but thankfully the orbiter is still working. So the orbiter has 2 cameras. Both of them have been hard at work. One is called the terrain mapping camera, and that began surveying the moon as soon as it arrived in orbit. Now ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization, has also released images taken by a second instrument called the Orbiter High Resolution Camera. All right. So, anyways, let's play this short little clip a little bit, not the whole way, and then we can go back to me explaining a little bit more what they what they have recently released.
आप सभी देशवासियों के लिए बहुत बड़ी खुशी की बात है और बहुत बड़ी सफलता की बात है दोस्तों। आप सभी को बता दूं कि चंद्रयान 2 को लेकर इसरो के हाथ 5 बड़ी सफलताएं आई है
That's
जिससे
interesting.
हमारे देश का सर गर्व से ऊंचा हो गया है।
10
तो आप
inches
सभी को
across.
बता दूं आप अपनी जिंदगी का केवल 2 मिनट का कीमती समय निकालकर इस वीडियो में बने रहिए, क्योंकि मैं आज आपको वो 5 बड़ी उपलब्धियां बताने वाला हूं जो हमारे इसरो के वैज्ञानिकों को मिली है। इन उपलब्धियों से दुनिया की देश भर की
So, that's a rocket, which launched Chandrayaan 2 to the moon back in July. And there you go. So that's a model of what it looks like. I don't believe that's actual. Yeah, since you can't see actual. Okay, so detached these two. One, the lander was going to land on the moon. The idea was for it to settle near the South Pole, perfectly land like that, have the rover come out. Unfortunately, that part failed. That looks actually really cool. All right, so you can see the plan unfortunately failed, but that the lander and rover there would have only survived for a week regardless, but it could have discovered something. But let me talk about the orbiter a little bit while this is playing. So the orbiter itself has these two cameras. So this latest one, orbital high resolution camera, according to Israel, has captured the most detailed images to date of the lunar surface from an orbiting spacecraft. So it can catch features that are about 10 inches across. That's pretty ridiculous. Okay. All right. So just 10 inches for metric units, people, that's 25 centimeters. All right. So October 4th, Israel released photos that was taken on, that was actually taken a month earlier, on September 5th, of a crater called Bogilawisky E, located near the lunar South Pole. Okay. Anyways, there's also some other instruments besides these cameras. There's Chandrayaan 2 Large Area Soft X-ray Spectrometer, otherwise known as CLASS, CLSS, and that device is used to measure X-ray fluorescence. That is right. Okay, you can pause the video or stop it. That's used to measure X-ray fluorescence, which lets scientists identify where on the lunar surface contains elements, which might be useful for future, say, prospecting or understanding of science. So, such as magnesium, aluminum, silicon, iron. All right. So, really enough, this instrument actually works best when the sun releases a solar flare, which is a gigantic stream of charged particles. It's like a hiccup from the sun. So typically that sends a dose of X-rays to the lunar surface. And now, CLASS also provides valuable data, not just about the moon, but about the environment around Earth. So for about 6 days every month, the moon passes within Earth geotel. What do you think the geotel is? Geotail. I never knew Earth had a tail, but apparently we do. So, geotel is scientists' name for the distorted bubble of Earth's magnetosphere, created by the constant push of the solar wind that spews out from the sun. So remember, Earth has a magnetic field, right? It turns out that the interaction of Earth's magnetic field with the solar particles that's constantly coming towards us, part of the solar wind, creates this area called the magnetosphere, all right, where there's a lot of charged particles in there. So apparently every 6 days of each month, the moon passes within the Earth's geotel. So we can actually learn more about Earth magnetic field, magnetosphere from that, which is kind of cool. Speaking of magnetic field, I want to jump into that topic because that's part of the things I want to talk about today. Recently, we have learned that Earth's magnetic field actually fluctuates a lot more than we have previously thought. So new studies suggest that magnetic poles can flip, like say 500 million years ago during the Cambrian period. Apparently flipped 26 times every million years or so, which is pretty wild. The highest frequency ever suggested. That's extreme, considering that until recently we believed that 5 flips per million years was considered very high. This was like 26 times every million years or so. All right. So what caused Earth to flip flop so much? We have no idea. Okay. The last magnetic field reversal for us happened around 780,000 years ago. Although there are concerns that it might happen again. Why are we concerned about this? It's not like the magnetic field is suddenly going to disappear tomorrow, but typically what happens is that when a magnetic field has a reversal, it weakens before it gets stronger again. So if it weakens, a lot of the reason we still have atmosphere and we're not all fried by radiation is due to the fact we have a magnetic field, all right? So if it weakens, that spells trouble for life on Earth, right? But thankfully, this is on the order of millions of years, the reversal, so we're unlikely to die from a sudden loss of magnetic field anytime soon, all right? You can read this paper on Earth and Planetary Science Letters, which was published on September 20th. Another interesting thing is on magnetic stars. Magneto stars. Is that what it's called? Magnet stars. Magna stars. All right. So, recently scientists have discovered that apparently merged stars can produce massively, powerfully magnetic stars. All right. Yeah, and they're 100 to 1,000 times stronger than the sun's. Could be it's pretty ridiculous. So, these scientists, they developed 3D computer simulations of mergers between pairs of massive stars that were not magnetic and followed how the results evolved over time. So they fused pairs having 17 times the Earth mass. And what did they discover? They discovered that after merged stars settle back into their equilibrium state, strong magnetic fields are produced. Okay, so they also found that merged stars inherited from their parents made them appear hotter than stars of the same age. This could explain, say, one particular star that we know of, say Tau Scorpii, which is called a blue straggler, which is a weird star, an oddball star that seems to be younger in age than its ancient neighbors, even though all the stars in the region presumably formed at the same time, right? That's kind of weird, right? So blue stragglers are extremely hot, young, and blue compared with the brethren. So previous research has shown that these blue stragglers may result from one star swallowing another star. Can you imagine that? A new star, basically a different, brighter star with bigger magnetic fields formed from like swallowing another star. That's pretty cool. All right. Also, researchers have found shed some light on the genesis of magna stars, which are the strongest magnets in the cosmos. And they could have magnetic fields up to approximately 5,000 trillion times that of Earth. That's crazy. For the sake of time, not sure we have time for... for the sake of time... Let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, let's watch a little short video on these magna stars because they're really cool.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the
Growing up as a
action
black kid in New
at
Jersey,
weareA1.com.
all I ever wanted to do was be a pro athlete. All of my role models were black athletes. And every time I would stare out the window and look at the sky and wonder what I'd be in the future, it always had to do with me catching some crazy football and scoring a touchdown. When it came to the point that I was told that I would not be able to play on an organized sports team for the rest of my life, it was something that I really didn't even know how to stomach moment. And I remember walking out of my cardiologist's office and just sitting in the hallway and breaking down for a few minutes just because it was something that I just couldn't plan for and couldn't account for. And I realized that in that moment, my entire life was going to be changed. And all of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that I had were going to go out of the window.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action at weareA1.com.
And I am back on SG2 on Space, episode number 48. So hopefully watching me on facebook.com/The Shen Show or on YouTube Space, calling at 713-489-9250 or drop a message on Facebook. All right. So we've been talking about magnetic stars. So I want to play a little short video before we jump into my favorite segment of any of these shows. So let's see it. Magnet stars.
Presented by Science at NASA. If you've ever heard the phrase, two sides of the same coin, you know it means two things that at first appear to be unrelated are actually parts of the same thing. Now, a fundamental example can be found in the deep recesses of space, in the form of a neutron star. A neutron star comes from a large star that has run out of fuel and exploded as a supernova. As gravity forces the star to collapse to the size of a small city, the star becomes so dense that a single teaspoon of the collapsed star would have as much mass as a mountain. The star's core, now a neutron star, can be rotating as fast as 10 times a second or more. Over time, the rotation of the core can start speeding up by pulling matter from its surroundings, rotating over 700 times a second. Some neutron stars, called radio pulsars, have strong magnetic fields and emit radio waves in predictable, reliable pulses. Other neutron stars have even stronger magnetic fields, displaying violent, high-energy outbursts of X-ray and gamma-ray light. These are called magnetars, and their magnetic fields are the strongest known in the universe, 1 trillion times stronger than that of our Sun. Since the 1970s, scientists have treated pulsars and magnetars as two distinct populations of objects. But in the last decade, evidence has emerged that shows they might sometimes be stages in the evolution of a single object. That's right, a neutron star might just be two sides of the same coin. First it's a radio pulsar, and later becomes a magnetar. Or maybe it's the other way around. Some scientists argue that objects like magnetars gradually stop emitting X-rays and gamma rays over time. Others propose the opposite theory, that the radio pulsar comes first.
All right, so that goes on for about a minute and a half more. I don't have the patience to watch this video. I'm kidding. For the sake of time, we have to cut it short. But it is a very interesting video, you know. So magnet stars, in other words, sum it up, it's a type of neutron star. Neutron star is a core of a massive star that basically divided all its fuel and collapsed into a star that's made of completely of neutrons, which is super massively dense. Okay. All right. In any case, so what did they find? They found that these star mergers, by the way, has a comparable magnetic field to these magnet stars, which is kind of cool. And 15%, by the way, previous research has just shown that 15% of the kind of supernova that creates neutron stars produce a magnet star. So, which is kind of interesting. So we could have massive magnetic fields, like stars that can produce massive magnetic fields, either from these collapsed neutron stars that form, not collapsed neutron stars, from this class of neutron stars, or magnet stars, or from star mergers. All right, there's two different ways of doing it, which is pretty cool. All right, so these scientists in the future, future research, they're going to see how long the magnetic fields of these merged stars actually last. They're also going to examine mergers of other types of massive stars. All right, so that should be cool. Let's see what happens. You can read this article on the October 9th issue of the journal Nature. You can find it online or go buy the publication. All right. Okay, then. Let's talk about my favorite part of any of this, right? Like I also said, this was one of the themes, aliens, right? So I talked a little bit from in the beginning about the Fermi paradox, which is like, where are they all if our universe is so vast, had billions of years to develop advanced civilizations, you know, life, all that intelligent life, advanced civilizations, should be somebody here by now. Where are they? Okay. Well, let me give you a few news which might shed some light on possibly they're already here, right? Like I keep saying. All right, falling fireballs. So on September 25th, apparently, in Dalcahue City, Dalcahue City, on the Chilean island of Chilo, excuse my Spanish, Chiloe, there were a bunch of objects that crash landed in 7 locations, and they set out fires that were put out by volunteer firefighters. Now, geologists from Chile's National Geology and Mining Service soon arrived to examine the 7 sites that have been scorched by the falling space stuff, right? And so originally, people, including Chilean astrophysicist Jose Maza, thought that the blazing bodies were meteorites or space debris, right? So then September 28th, the geologists released their official assessment. None of the 7 sites contained traces of meteorite. All right, so they weren't meteors. In other words, asteroids that enter our atmosphere. They changed their name. They're called meteors. It's the same thing. All right, so logic would seem to indicate that they're space junk, right? They're human junk and somehow enter our atmosphere. However, they did not say that. Okay. Who knows what exactly it is? They're gonna release it, so maybe it's something. Since stuff do fall into our atmosphere, like the old satellites, rocket parts, and so forth. So I'm keeping my eye out, see what they have. All right. Remember last week I talked about the organization that formed by the former Blink-182 singer who had they apparently had these mysterious materials which were found. They would procure them, which no manufacturing process from back then could have made. So who knows? Even stranger, apparently aliens may be mutilating cows. Yes, that is really, really weird. Okay. So this happened earlier this summer in Eastern Oregon. According to NPR, who interviewed this local sheriff, so the story goes that there were 5 breeding bulls, and they showed up dead on a ranch with every drop of blood sucked from their body and with their tongues and genitals surgically removed. Okay, that already sounds terrible. All right, then the mutilated bulls looked like giant, deflated plush toys, according to the report, which frames the death as eerie and mysterious. Okay. So, county law enforcement investigating the murders. So that's Harney County Sheriff's Deputy Dane Jenkins. He's ruled out bears, wolves, cougars, or poisonous plants. Also noting that the animals were not shot. In fact, Jenkins even acknowledged the alien theory. He did not deny it. He told NPR, a lot of people lean towards the aliens. One caller had told us to look for basically a depression under the carcass because he said that the alien ships would kind of beam the cow up and do whatever they're going to do with it. Then they drop them from a great height. So, the murdered bulls were pretty pricey, $6,000 each to be exact. But why would a human only want their blood, genitals, and tongues? There were apparently other reports of dead cows turning up bloodless, one of which dates back all the way to the 80s. So unless there's some weird cult or some guy out there mutilating cows or bulls for nearly 4 decades, I wouldn't discount the fact of aliens. Now, exactly why would they suck the blood from these bulls and then cut off their tongues and genitals? I don't know. Why are aliens doing this? I don't know. Why have they been doing it since the 1980s? I don't know either. I mean, it's just one of the weird things going on yeah. I mean, thankfully, no human has encountered that yet, I don't think. So that would be really freaky. Yeah, then that'd be like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Which is interesting. I mean, why would they do that to cows or bulls but not humans? I suppose because we're intelligent. But still, that seems rather gruesome. All right. unless you have a deranged human, my theory goes with the aliens. All right, who's basically grabbing random bulls and killing them and sucking their blood and all that jazz. All right. Or chupacabras, but I don't like to talk about them because I don't know if they're real or not. That sounds absurd. Okay. What possibly may be even more absurd, and I never thought aliens would get mixed up with like conventional religion. I can understand, Scientology or something, right? You make up stuff like that. But apparently there's a bunch of Buddhist worshippers in Thailand who believes in an alien portal where they are. So, alien tourism, which is kind of funny, right? That there's a remote hilltop in Thailand which may hold the key connecting with the extraterrestrial world. So Khao Kala, Khao, and the second word is Kala, Kala, in Nakhon Sawan, Nakhon, sorry, I don't know Thai. And the second word is Sawan, Sawan, which translates to City of Heaven. Yes, I would love to go there. Check it out. It's located 3 hours from Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, and it has become a hotspot for tourists. So, several news outlets, including Vice and CNN, recently traveled to the area where some people believe humans can telepathically communicate with aliens. All right, so this hill is located amongst a sugarcane plantation, and some people say that it has a secret wormhole which allows aliens to travel between different dimensions. So, if you are a believer, what would you do? You apparently practice meditation at Hill 145, where a gigantic Buddha statue sits below a statue of a 7-headed snake. That already is kind of interesting. There are several other Buddha statues, including one called Buddha's Footprint, nearby. Okay, so Somjet Rapith, a member of Khao Kala group, believes that the area possesses supernatural activity qualities. He said that the members practice strict Buddhist principles and were able to contact aliens from the planet Pluto. Well, no longer planet. Aliens from Pluto and another planet called Logokatapata Tigon, located somewhere in the Milky Way. So Somjet Rapath, she said, they have high virtues and morals. The only way to make contact with them is to practice Dhamma to the highest levels. And Dhamma, by the way, means Buddhist teachings. So, yes, you have to be a Buddhist and you have to practice Dhamma in order to interact with these aliens. All right, so guys, if you go there, be Buddhist for a little while. Or, I'm kidding. Do what you wish. But, anyways, so what do these aliens look like? They're apparently slender, little, silvery humanoids.
Okay, we have a question. From one of your listeners. One of your listeners, Miles Monroe, says, does that mean there will be ion fields traveling through space that will be rideable? That was from earlier. He also asked, maybe they lock their doors when they pass Earth. He's talking about the aliens. And he said maybe the aliens use Earth as a truck stop for snacks while on a road trip.
Well, the last one, truck stop on a road trip, I don't know about that one. But possibly. The ion wind thing, yeah, I mean, solar wind does carry charged particles, which are ions. So, and that's hitting an Earth magnetic field all the time. And, as we see the auroras because they interact with, especially the stronger magnetic fields right near the North and South Pole. So, I don't know what the intentions of these aliens are. And heck, why are they, in Thailand next to this Buddha statue, and how are they communicating there? Gosh, who knows? I mean, the way I see it, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on here. I would not be surprised if there's aliens that are, from a different world, or a different dimension, different universe. Is entirely possible. I mean, on this show, I've talked about parallel universes as well, right? So, who knows? I mean, I think there's a whole universe of possibilities out there. What's going on here? But I'll add on to this with the Thailand folks. Some of these followers have reported seeing unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and they've also seen silhouettes, basically shadows of figures on the hilltop. So that is pretty crazy. Speaking of Thailand, I actually just remembered a crazy YouTube video I saw a little while ago. And this is not necessarily alien related, but would be in the realm of the supernatural, I presume. So I saw this video of this girl who started having lightning finger powers stuff. Like stuff started shooting out from her fingers. And like she was surprised. She surprised herself. So this leads me to wonder whether superpowers are real, which I always presume they are. But that's a completely different topic from aliens, all right? Noted. All I'm going to say is that there's a lot of things in this world we don't understand. Can only go so far. I would not be surprised if there's a portal there, or they could just be delusional. As far as the cow mutilation, gosh, who knows? All sorts of things are going on. All right, guys. What else was I going to say? I think that's about it, really. I carried a bunch of books here, but most of them would not be relevant to the show. For instance, do you really want to read vector geometry? I know I would, but probably not everybody would. All right. In any case, with that, thank you for listening. This has been SG2 on Space, episode number 48, of course. And support me on patreon.com/SG2 on Space. letter G, number 2, on Space. Follow me on facebook.com/The Shen Show. And follow Action 1, of course. All right. Take care. Oh, one last thing. Look up, because you never know what you will see. There we go.
Peace, it's Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.